How Schumer and Jeffries planned to win over the American people. In the hours leading up to the State of the Union address, I got to see the state of Democratic strategy from both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue. First, at a media luncheon with President Biden, followed by a media sit-down with Senate Majority Leader Charles E. Schumer, New York, and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, New York. Because the meeting with Biden was off the record, I can't tell you what was said. But lunchtime Biden's animated conversation in the Blue Room of the White House left me unsurprised when I saw the fired-up president a few hours later thundering from the floor of the House of Representatives. The meeting with Schumer and Jeffries was on the record. And they each provided a useful three-step road map for the chaotic months ahead. Schumer says there is a hierarchy to his approach to legislating. First, try to get it done in a bipartisan way, he said, slumped comfortably in his chair inside an ornate conference room on the Senate side of the Capitol. Since the beginning of the Biden administration, bipartisan successes include a host of bills, from the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill and the CHIPS and Science Act to the Respect for Marriage Act. The second hierarchy, particularly in the Senate, Schumer continued, is you can try to do it with just Democrats, as happened with the Inflation Reduction Act. Schumer said the third option is to do a show-up vote to show the difference between the parties. A good example of this was the unsuccessful vote in 2021 to pass the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. The bill had no chance against a Republican filibuster. But forcing the vote to be taken put Republicans on the record opposing a popular measure, and signaled to members of the Democratic base that the party hasn't given up on issues important to them. Schumer's three hierarchies in the Senate dovetail perfectly the three phases of strategy for the House, outlined by Jeffries during the meeting. Both approaches require patience and persistence from lawmakers and party faithful. Phase 1, pass it. Phase 2, implement it. Phase 3, continuously talk about it over and over and over again, Jeffries prescribed. The minority leader believes that Phase 1 was the hardest, yet Democrats were able to pass a raft of legislation despite what he called historically close majorities in the House and in the Senate. So we're entering into Phase 2 and Phase 3 simultaneously, Jeffries said, implementing the legislation and then traveling the country to make sure voters know about it. Biden's State of the Union address was confirmation of this. As the president detailed various programs and projects stemming from the Infrastructure and CHIPS Acts, he repeatedly said some variation of, "Let's finish the job." Then, he, Vice President Harris and other administration officials fanned out around the country to amplify the previous night's message. This contrasts sharply with what's happening in the Republican majority, controlled, so to speak, by Speaker Kevin McCarthy, California. During the midterm elections, Republicans campaigned on crime and inflation. But now that they have the House majority, all they can talk about is Hunter Biden's laptop and their hurt feelings over being held accountable by Twitter for bad jokes, threats of violence and disinformation. Maybe they'll get more serious after the president releases his budget on March 9th. LOL. Republican chaos notwithstanding, Biden and the Democrats have their work cut out for them. Despite their legislative achievements over the past 2 years, the latest post-ABC News poll showed that 62% of those surveyed believe Biden has accomplished not very much or little or nothing. A dispatch in the Post on Biden's trip to Wisconsin last week highlights the gap between the way Biden touts the impact of his policies and the way real people in the Badger State have experienced them. This will change over the next 2 years, if Democratic strategies work like 1, 2, 3. As the president told me last October, a lot of what we've done and we've passed has not kicked in yet. It doesn't kick in until next year. Next year is now. There will be an untold number of groundbreakings, ribbon cuttings and grand openings, along with thousands of jobs filled. Biden and his fellow Democrats won't stop talking about it. It will look infinitely better than the circus on the other side of the aisle.